Welcome back, crew. It's January, and that means it's time for a new game of the month. And if you're new to the channel, what we do is we pick a different tabletop RPG each month, making it our game for that month. And what that means is we're going to go through and go over how to build a PC using the system's rules, go over some of the system's core mechanics and how to actually play the game at your table, and then something unique for the system that stands out or kind of makes it a little bit different from other TTRPGs in the space. And as always, we end the month with our actual play game and where we show off the system, run it through its paces, and give away a copy of the PDF of the game to one lucky viewer in a raffle. And for January, our game of the month is going to be Paizo's Pathfinder 2e system. So, a few of you guys may be surprised on that one, because typically I usually pick systems I haven't played before. But I'll say Pathfinder is the system I like but get to play the least. It's one of those ones I've played a handful of times, so just really due to timing and the resources, haven't had a chance to really play much of. And to bring up the elephant in the room with the open game license issues with 5e and that encouraging many players to branch out, I've been seeing people mention Pathfinder a lot, and I kind of got the itch to play, and I'm like, why not do two things at once? So Pathfinder 2e is going to be our game of the month. We're going to show you how to build a PC using their rules. We're going to go over some of the core mechanics, both for combat as well as adventuring using the system. And as always, we're going to do something unique with the system. And for Pathfinder 2e, that's going to be showcasing some of the DM tools and resources that the system provides to you in both the Game Master Guide as well as the regular core rulebook. Because one of the biggest things I found when looking at Pathfinder is it gives the DM a lot more tools than you'd expect, especially if you're coming from a 5e background. So I think that's really one of the cool things it does, and I want to give it a little bit of a shout out. So today's video is usually kind of the first impressions video, but I've played Pathfinder 2e before, so this one's going to be a little bit more, we'll call it second impressions, but just some things I really like about the system and some things I think people coming from 5e may really gravitate towards. One of the biggest being this is a pretty fleshed out, very fleshed out system. There's a ton of great content out there for Pathfinder 2e. I know one of the things I've heard from players, from my own players, and even from just people talking about trying new RPGs out since all the open game license stuff is going on, is that they want to find one that's fleshed out like 5e, that there's a lot of different adventures to run, self-help guides, people in the internet talking about it. They want that community, they want that activity around it. And I think Pathfinder 2e is like it's the second biggest compared to 5e, so you'll get a lot of that there. And one of the things I really like, especially if you compare the two, is that there's a lot of resources that get pumped out from Paizo itself. So they have a similar style, similar guidelines. They all flow together really well. Where with Wizards, sometimes it can be a little bit more the third-party producers that are producing a lot of like the worthwhile content. But at least with what I've seen with Pathfinder, a lot of it's straight produced in-house and quality stuff at that too. So that's always a cool thing on that side and something I really enjoy with the system. But outside of that, really, things where I think Pathfinder shines, and especially if you're a game master coming from 5e, or even just a player, balance is really good with this system between the classes, as well as balance between making combats and things like that. I've been a big, I've ran 5e for probably 6-7 years now. I forgot when I started back into it. But it's using their adventuring day system, as well as kind of using their experience, the challenge rating system to build combat can always be a little bit hit or miss. It's a little bit of an art style. You can get really good at it and make it work, but it's definitely more art than science, I think. The nice thing with the Paizo system for the Pathfinder 2e is it's a little more science on that side. If you run their guidelines at base, and you can kind of tailor it to the day they're going to be having, fairly easy, a little bit easier than I say than with the D&D system. You can have challenging encounters that are going to kind of go pretty, not formulaic, but kind of where you'd expect them. And that means and the nice thing with having it where you expect it, when you build at base, you could still make it harder, easier, difficult, all of that. And they kind of give you the tools to do that without too much headache or spending too much of your time to do so. And that's really one of the things I enjoy with them. And kind of along that balance too, because before all the OGL stuff happened, if you were on the D&D subreddits, the big thing that was always a conversation was the balance between marshals and casters, which 5e. It definitely had a lot of work to do on that, to be positive. But Pathfinder, I think, does a great job of it out of the box. It's one of those ones where if you pick a martial, you're not going to feel hemmed in. It gives you things you can do. It gives you a lot of different resources you can bring to bear, both within and outside of combat. So you can really kind of go through and do exactly, kind of fulfill your character's ambitions, or what you just see that character doing without having to build in magic or caster to make them relevant in the game, which is something I love for it. So that's a really cool thing on that side. But yeah, balance over as a whole, I think Pathfinder, I don't know what type of math they do or who they've got working there, but they do a really good job of making it. And then even with the TTRPG, there's always going to be some variance due to dice and probability and all that. But I think they've done the best of any system I've played with making it, if you kind of run it towards their rules, it should be about where you expect it, unless the dice gods hate your players and they just keep rolling that one after that one. So that's a really cool piece of it. Definitely one of my favorite first impressions when I watched it the first time. Now, a couple other cool things with the system too, and this is probably my favorite thing for Pathfinder 2e. If you've watched any of my other videos, even some of my Star Wars 5e content at Dungeon Jedi Masters, my biggest thing that I like is customization, I should say. I love to be able to go through and make my PC feel unique and make my champion feel like somebody, my own champion that plays distinctly different from somebody else's champion. I love when a system where you could have two characters in the same class at the table and they play completely different. And that's one thing that Pathfinder 2e does really well, because you have so many different options between your feats and different things you can pick with your character as you're building them out, that you can make each of them feel distinct and have their own niche in their role, even if you had a party that did all the same class. So that's really cool to me. I always love building out and customizing my PCs. If you've watched the channel before, you know I've been gravitating more towards classless systems, but with Pathfinder 2e, I like the way they do it. I like the options you have available. And it's just something that I really think gives some cool things you can bring to bear. So that's another really huge like for it. If you've really, especially if you've played 5e for a long time, you've either been bored a little bit with the amount of customization, or you've done like I did, because I still run a 5e campaign and I've brought in a ton of homebrew that's kind of bloated it a little bit, because I've stolen things from Star Wars 5e, the Storm Chaser system, MCDM, Kobold Press, all over it, kind of Frankenstein it together to make my own system. But I'm thinking of switching over to Paizo's Pathfinder 2e from that game as well. We're actually about to finish the first campaign, but it's just really one of those things that I think flows better with Pathfinder 2e, because everything is built in, the customization is there right from the core rulebook, and they've got a ton of extra rulebooks you can bring in. But even if you just have that core rulebook, you're going to be able to feel like you can go through and build a PC that is unique and fits the mold you're looking for, which I think is great. Couple other things too, just for some of the first impressions that really kind of stood out to me, or second impressions I should say, but I love how they have their action system in the game, because one of the things sometimes I think can trip up players in 5e is like the kind of how it works with kind of movement and your action and bonus actions and free actions. Paizo simplifies that down with Pathfinder. You get 3 actions, for lack of a better way to put it, that you can do each turn. And those actions can include your movement. You could attack all 3 times, not advised, unless you've got some things to balance it out. Or you could move, cast a spell, and some of those spells may take longer to cast depending on how potent they are. And you just get those 3 things you can do each turn, and it can be any mixed match of what you want to do. And I think that's cool. I love the openness of that. It gives you options and just different ways to interact with the battlefield. Like you could raise your shield if you wanted to make sure you have a little bit of extra defense, and just different things you can do to really just customize it out. Now, along that, and the last thing I'll probably touch on for just first impressions, second impressions for the system, I really enjoy how they set up their skills. One of the complaints I've had about 5e, and not to bring down 5e, but is like it feels like your attribute matters more, proficiency kind of matters more than the attribute, and there's only like 2 levels of proficiency with 5e, kind of the proficient and expertise. There's really not much room to grow there. But with Pathfinder, they've got a ton of different levels between trained all the way up to master, where you can just really show your true talent with a certain skill. If you wanted to be stealthy, you could do that. Perception, you could do that. You can have it with your attack skills, all of that. And I like that. I like more bonuses. I like to keep it interesting on that side. I know for some, there may be a little bit more math, and that's something I will honestly say with Pathfinder. The numbers are a little bit bigger. It takes a little bit more math. There's no bounded accuracy with the system, or a different type, I should say. So that is definitely something that comes into play. But I think the level of customization and the options that it opens up for you definitely kind of alleviates that. So really one of those kind of trade ups on that side, but for me it's a positive. I don't mind a little bit of complexity with the system, and I think a lot of people, especially if you've been playing RPG or TTRPGs for a while, once you do dive into it, you're not going to be overwhelmed, and especially if you've learned 5e. Coming over to Pathfinder's 2e system, it's going to be easy. The hardest hurdle for playing TTRPGs is learning the first one. Once you get over that, most systems are going to be easy to pick up, and you just have to pick out what mechanics are important to them, and kind of how to flow in their system. And Pathfinder 2e does a great job of laying that out. So that was just a quick look at some of my second impressions, we'll say, because I've played this one before for the system. I'm kind of geeked out about getting to play this. I haven't ran a Pathfinder 2e game in 2 or 3 years, I think, just due to timing and not having a group of players, but my server's pretty excited for it. We were talking about what we wanted to do for January, and all the OGL stuff came out, and people just kept bringing up Pathfinder, and we're like, let's jump in, let's get some fun games going with it. So stay tuned for this month. As I mentioned, this weekend, we're going to go through how to build a Pathfinder PC. We're going to be doing it at level 5 too, so you get to see a little bit of how to progress them, and all the cool things that come with the system. I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know what we're building yet. I've got to see what my players are running. I want to build something different than they are, just to kind of, in case I want to throw it in the game for some reason. But after we're doing that, we're going to go through the mechanics. We're going to divide this into 2 videos. One with out-of-game adventuring mechanics, or out-of-combat adventuring mechanics, and then one that's purely focused on combat mechanics, just so you can kind of see how they focus and not try to combine it into a super long video. And then after that, we're going to go over some of the GM tools and resources that the Paizo system has for you, so you can see what's available and how best to run your Pathfinder 2e game. And then finally, join us on January 26th. Check the description for a link to my Twitch channel, Tegan J Gaming at Twitch. If you're not following me, drop a follow there too, so you can come through and join us for the actual play of the system and your chance to win a free PDF copy of the Pathfinder 2e system, so you can bring this amazing game to your table. So make sure to join us. If you're new to the channel, drop a subscribe, like, follow. We do this every month with a different TTRPG, and go take a look at some of the other ones we've come across, especially if you're researching systems due to the OGL stuff. I think we've reviewed 7-8 games, so check them out. There's a lot of gems in there, and I'm looking forward to adding Pathfinder 2e to the group. So thank you guys for watching, and until next time.